is Hassa, and I'm pleased to be presenting alongside my colleague Rodal Mheri from Taxpayer Services Department. We have arranged this webinar for you to guide you through the return process for corporate tax. Today we will walk you through the demo of the CT return process. We hope that this session will provide you with the necessary information required to help you complete your corporate tax return. During the webinar, a survey is available for you to provide your feedback on the session. Before we start, please make sure to follow these steps. If you are using a mobile phone, make sure to visit your mobile settings and look for WebEx Meet, then allow WebEx Meet to access your microphone. Desktop users, click on the little arrows next to unmute and then select headphones, AirPods under speaker. We will walk you through the agenda for today. We'll go through the introduction of the session. We will then provide a demo of the return process and summarize the key takeaway from the session. At the end, there will be a short Q&A session. This feature will be available at the end of the session at the Q&A, and the questions will be limited to corporate tax return process. With this, I hand over to my colleague Ms. Rodal Mheri to walk you through the webinar.
Good morning, everyone. We hope that you can hear us clearly. Welcome to today's session. We will start first with the introduction of the session. As you may know, we've designed this session to walk you through the corporate tax return requirements through the corporate tax for the taxable persons in EmiraTax portal. As you may know, the tax return must be submitted by a taxable person or another person who has the right to do so on behalf of the taxable person, which includes either a tax agent or legal representative, and also the parent company of the tax group. We will view at few minutes the tax return that should be completed and filed online through EmiraTax within 9 months of the end of the tax period, which should be the currency. If it was in UAE dirhams, it should be used for accounting purposes, where amounts should be converted to UAE dirhams using the exchange rate set by the Central Bank of the UAE, and in the following order: spot rate, average monthly exchange rate, and average annual exchange rate. You will view the tax return steps. That's mainly 9 main steps or parts, which allows the taxable person to report their taxable income, including any relevant adjustments such as exemptions and reliefs claimed. As mentioned by Hassa, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar to answer any questions related and limited to corporate tax return. We would like to highlight that the Ministry of Finance and the Federal Tax Authority launched their initiative to waive your late penalty registration under the corporate tax law, which should be applicable to corporate taxpayers and certain exempt persons required to register with the Federal Tax Authority, where they will need to submit their tax return or annual declaration within 7 months from the end of the first tax period, where full compliance with the provisions of the corporate tax law applies. And now, before starting the walkthrough in EmiraTax, we would like to highlight the key points to take into consideration before starting your filing. So let's start first with the taxpayer's details. Kindly do not file your return if the following is incorrect: either entity type or tax period. For example, if you are registered as a natural person instead of a juridical person, you will need to apply first in EmiraTax to change your entity type or tax period if needed, and then only file your return once the FTA has updated the entity type or tax period. Moving to the small business relief, which is an important step as well, you need to know that if your revenue equal to or less than 3 million dirhams, you will be qualified to claim the small business relief, where the corporate tax return should be simplified when you elect for the small business relief and no corporate tax is payable. You do not need to attach your financial statement but must be able to prove your revenue were requested by the FTA, and you may refer to the corporate tax guide on the small business relief for more details and guidance. Moving to elections. You need to know that there are certain elections that are irrevocable. Please pay careful consideration to the current and future tax consequences of each election before you make a decision, where the irrevocable elections are either realization basis, transactional rules, or transfers within qualifying group. Moving to the financial statements and accounting methods, you need to know that all taxpayers, excluding the small business relief, need to attach their financial statements to their corporate tax return, where your revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams in a tax period, you can use the cash basis of accounting. And if your revenue of more than 3 million dirhams in a tax period, you will be required to prepare your financial statements in terms of IFRS or IFRS for SMEs. And we would like to highlight that your financial statement should be signed and stamped before attaching it to your corporate tax return. You will need as well to consider whether you should engage an accountant with an appropriate experience to assist you with the preparation of the financial statement. And now, moving to nil returns, which is an important topic, and we're receiving more inquiries on the same topic. You will need to know that if you earned no revenue during the tax period, you can elect for the small business relief, and in which case the return should be simplified. If you do not elect for the small business relief, you will need to complete the normal corporate tax return. Where amounts are nil, you need to populate nil in the relevant fields. And finally, for free zones, we would like to highlight that not all free zone companies are qualifying free zone persons. So qualifying free zone persons are taxed at a rate of 0% on their qualifying income. You may refer back to the corporate tax law, the corporate tax guide on free zone persons, and the ministerial, in addition to the cabinet decision, for more information. Also, you need to know that the qualifying free zone persons may elect to subject to the normal corporate tax regime. And now we will proceed with the corporate tax return demonstration, where we will walk you into step by step of the return process. You will start first by logging into Emiratax portal and adding your credentials details. We hope that you can hear us clearly now. So we will start first by logging into Emiratax portal and adding your credentials details, such as your email address, the password, and the security code showing on your screens. You will proceed by clicking on the taxable person profile you would like to proceed with from the taxable person list, and you will click on view. Once you click on view, you will have the first page of the corporate tax filings and refunds. You may click on corporate tax filings where highlighted in green and click on view all. Once you click on view all, you will have the corporate tax filings page where you may view the filing details of each tax period. So you will click on the tax period you would like to proceed with and you will click on Actions and File. Once you click on File, you will have the instructions and guidelines page. You may go through it and check all the required documents and the eligibility criteria, the service steps, and you will confirm at the end of the page that you have read the above instructions and guidelines. You will click on Start and you will have the corporate tax return procedure started. So you will have the first page highlights all the steps, which should be the taxpayer details. Second step should be elections. Third step should be accounting schedules. Fourth step, accounting adjustments and exempt income. Fifth steps for the reliefs. Sixth step for the other adjustments. And seventh step for the tax liability and tax credit. Eighth step should be the reviewing and declaration before submitting your final corporate tax return. But we would like to highlight that based on your answers to the question and if you are a qualifying free zone person or not, the steps should either have one more step for the free zones details, or if you elected for the small business relief, these steps should be less than all these steps. So let's assume we're starting the corporate tax return. You will need to make sure that the filing period appearing on the top of all steps is accurate before starting your return, where you may view the corporate tax return period, the corporate tax return due date, and the corporate tax year end. You will start first with the taxpayer details, where you will need to ensure that all the information provided from your registration application that was pre-populated in the system is accurate and updated. You will proceed by adding your address details as well and reviewing it from the registration application. You will then proceed by answering the question either with yes or no, where this is an important step in this page. You need to answer if the above information is correct by either yes or no. If you answered with yes, you will proceed with the information provided. If you answered with no, you will be promoted to submit an application first to amend the registration, and once the application is approved, you will come back and complete your return. You can update the taxable person's information if applicable by answering the question with yes or no, and you will proceed with updating the information for the unincorporated partnership details. When scrolling down, you will have the business activity details section. You will update it as well and you will answer the question with yes or no. And next, you will proceed to the free zones step. We would like to highlight that this is an important step where you should take into consideration before answering any question. You need to complete it carefully if you wish to proceed as a qualifying free zone person. And you need to know that it's mandatory to have your return filed regardless of the revenue amount or profit or loss status, where this applies to all registered taxpayers. And we'd like to highlight that some elections are irrevocable, so it's important to understand what is the consequences of each election before making a choice. So let's assume we answered the questions as yes, and we will proceed as a qualifying free zone person. You will click on next step, and the next step should appear as a new step for the free zones details. As you may know, that when we started, it was 8 main steps, but as we've selected that we would like to proceed as a qualifying free zone person, we had this pop-up page of the second step for the free zone details. You will update your revenue schedule first, and you will proceed by completing and updating the revenue schedule, and you will have the total revenue for the de minimis requirement auto-calculated for your reference. You will proceed as well for the non-qualifying revenue, where the total non-qualifying revenue should be auto-calculated and gray out for your reference as well. You will scroll down and proceed to the non-qualifying revenue, and you will update the de minimis calculation details in this section and will proceed to the qualifying revenue. Once you update the de minimis calculation and you updated as well the qualifying revenue, you will scroll down to updating the substance of the free zones details if applicable to you by either answering the questions carefully or adding the required details. Once you scroll down, you will have the free zones confirmations details. You may add the applicable confirmations to your application, and you will update any additional information based on each emirate. You will then add the additional information. It should be as an optional at the end of the page, and you will click on next step to proceed to the third step. Third step should be the irrevocable elections. You need to know that in this page, some irrevocable elections should be done in the first tax return, where you will not be able to change it in the future returns. So you need to ensure that you understand the future consequences of each election you select in this page. Let's start first with the realization basis. You will update the question, you will answer the questions in this step, and you will need to know that before attaching your financial statement, it should be signed and stamped before attaching it in any of the required fields for the same. You will scroll down by making the election for the transactional rules if applicable to you, where you will need to know the consequences of each election you make. We have the small business relief section, where it's an important section you need to take into consideration before answering the question. You can make the election to apply for the small business relief, where you are only entitled to this relief if your revenue is 3 million dirhams or less. If you are entitled for the small business relief, you should answer the question: is the taxable person a member of a multinational enterprise group with either yes or no? Where if your revenue is equal to or less than 3 million dirhams, you may elect for the small business relief, and in which case the tax return will be simplified to you with 2 to 3 pages long. And if you would like to proceed as the normal corporate tax return, you will add nil to the amounts where nil in the return. So you will choose whether you would like to proceed by electing the small business relief or not. Next, you will make the election for the transfers within qualifying group section by answering the question either with yes and or no and adding the required documents. You will scroll down to the election for relief for the business restructuring transactions, And next, you will make the election for the foreign permanent establishment income if applicable to you. You will click on next step and you will proceed to the fourth step, which should be the accounting schedules. We would like to highlight that in the fourth step of the accounting schedule, it has been divided into three parts for your action to add all the required fields. And we would like to emphasize that all the numeric values should be entered as positive in this step, where the system will determine where positive or negative adjustment should be applied in the tax calculation depending on the nature of the field. So please make sure whenever you add any numeric values, it should be entered as positive. So we will start first with the accounting schedules for the statement of profit or loss, where you will have the chance to update the operating revenue details, and the gross profit or loss should be auto-calculated for your reference. You will scroll down by updating the interest expense or income details if applicable, and you will have the net interest or expense auto-calculated to you. You will proceed to the net losses or gains on disposable of assets, where you will need to add all the numeric values in positive, and you will have the total auto-calculated. You will scroll down to the foreign exchange gains or losses details, where you will need to add them, and you will have the total auto-calculated for your reference. You will proceed by updating the expense of other income details, where the expense net of other income should be auto-calculated for your reference as well. You will have the net profit or loss in dirhams gray out for your reference and auto-calculated based on all the details you've entered above. You will scroll down by updating the statement of other comprehensive income details if applicable, and you will have the total comprehensive income for the year auto-calculated and gray out for your reference. Once you review the total comprehensive income of the year, you will scroll down to the assets section, where you can update the assets details if applicable, and you will scroll down by updating the non-current assets, and the total non-current assets and the total assets should be auto-calculated for your reference. You will scroll down to the liabilities section, where you will update the liabilities details, and you will have the total liabilities auto-calculated for your reference as well. You can update the equity details in the section below, and you will have the total equity auto-calculated for your reference. Once you've entered all the numeric values correctly, you will view the total equity and liability, which should be auto-calculated based on all the details entered above by you. You will need to enter the total number of employees in this section, and you will update the audit details by either answering the question with yes or no and adding the shareholder to the capital distribution schedule. Once done, you will proceed to the next step. So fifth step should be accounting adjustments and exempt income. In this step, you will have to update the accounting income for adjustments such as provisions adjustments, realization basis adjustments, and all other adjustments. You will enter first your accounting income details. Next, you will continue with updating the accounting income details, where you will need to answer the questions carefully and adding all the required fields. Once you're done, you will proceed by continuing with updating the accounting income details as well. You will need to add all the numeric values correctly in positive and answer all questions. Once done, you will move to the realization basis adjustments. You will add all the required fields and all the numeric values that should be in positive, and you will scroll down to updating the same section of the realization basis adjustments, and next you will update the transactional adjustments. Once you've completed all the required fields for the transactional adjustments, you will scroll down by updating the same as well, and you will have the exempt income details section where you will need to answer the questions carefully for the exempt income, and next you will need to continue with updating the exempt income details. Whenever you scroll down, you will have as well the updates for the exempt income, such as the description for the same and adding all the numeric values. Once you update the foreign permanent establishment income, you will add all the numeric values in positive, and once you review all the numeric values and the required fields you've added, you will proceed to the next step. Sixth step should be the relief step, which is the most important step as well. In this section, you will have this chance to include any adjustments which are arising from reliefs claimed, including transfers within qualifying group or business restructuring relief. And we would like to highlight that all the numeric values should be entered in positive, where the system will determine if positive or negative adjustments is needed. You can update first the reliefs by adding the details of the transfers within qualifying group, and you will proceed by adding the description for the transfers within qualifying group. As we've mentioned, all numeric values should be added in positive, and whenever you're done, you will scroll down to the business restructuring relief. So once you've added all the numeric values correctly, you will have the business restructuring relief where you will need to answer the questions carefully, and based on your questions answers, you will have to add the details by adding the numeric values for the description, either for the gain subject to the business restructuring relief, for the current tax period, and all the required fields. You will continue by updating the same, and you will click on next step. Seventh step is the other adjustment step, where it will allow you to make the adjustments for the non-deductible expenditure, adjustments for interest income or expenditure, transactions with related parties and connected persons if applicable. Also, in this section, you need to know that all numeric values should be added in positive, where the system will read it if positive or negative adjustments is needed. You will enter first the adjustments for the non-deductible expenditure by adding all the numeric values, either for the non-deductible expenditure, non-deductible pension contributed in UAE dirhams as well, and all the required fields. You will add the description when scrolling down for the adjustments for the non-deductible expenditure, and once you're done, you will scroll down to the adjustments for interest income or expenditure. You need to answer the questions carefully, where if your answers was yes, you will need to enter the interest capping schedule. So let's assume we've answered yes. You will need to click on the blue box of the interest capping schedule. Whenever you click on it, you will have the pop-up page where you will need to enter the interest capping schedule details, where you will have the non-deductible net interest expenditure brought forward auto-calculated for your reference. You will proceed by either canceling and going back for the main step or saving and going back to the main step. So we're saving the page and going back to the main step, where we will complete with the procedure for the adjustments for interest, income, and expenditure, where it should be auto-calculated for your reference. You will scroll down as well for the transactions with related parties and connected persons section. You will need to answer the questions as we've mentioned earlier, either with yes or no, and based on your answers, you will add the related party transaction schedule and the connected person schedule. So let's start first with adding the related party transaction schedule. You will click on it and you will have the pop-up page where you will need to add new item for the related party transaction schedule. Whenever you click on add the new item, you will have the first page where you will need to add the gross income received from the related parties details, and once you finish all the required fields, you'll click on add and you'll go back to the page where you may review the provided information, and you will click on the second title of the tile, which is the expenditure paid to related parties. And you will do the same by clicking on add new item. Whenever you clicked on add new item, you will need to add all the required fields for the details of the expenditure paid to related parties. Once you add it carefully, you will click on add and you will have the page where you will have the chance to review the information provided. You may view all the provided information by clicking on the summary table. You will view the numeric values you've provided in the information for both gross income received and the related parties. You cannot make any amendments to this section. It should be for your reference, and you'll click on save and go back, where you will have the additions as a result of adjustments and transactions which were not at arm's length auto-calculated for your reference. You will scroll down to the connected person schedule, and we will do the same by clicking on it and adding a new item for the connected person schedule, where you will need to add all the required fields and you will click on add. Once you click on add, you will have it for your review, and you will click on save and go back to the main step, where you will need to enter the transactions with related parties and connected persons details. You will scroll down to the adjustments for income and expenditure derived from a qualifying investment fund by adding the required fields and the numeric values in positive, and you will scroll down to the other adjustments section if applicable to you, where you may add it here, and you will click on next step and proceed to the 8th step. 8th step is the tax liability and tax credit step, where it will display your final tax liability. You may view the taxable income which should be auto-calculated as a result of the schedule you've provided. You will proceed to the tax losses section, where you will answer the question with yes or no, and based on your answer, you will add the tax losses schedule. Once you click on the tax losses box schedule, you will have this pop-up page where you cannot make any amendment to the grayout fields, but you will click on the second title of the tile, where highlighted in green now for you. This tax losses claimed from other taxable persons. Once you click on it, you will have this page where you will click on add new. Uh, once you click on the tax losses claimed from other taxable persons, you will have this page appearing now. You will click on add new item to add the tax losses claimed from other taxable persons. Once you click on it, you will have the page where you need to enter the tax losses claimed from other taxable persons, and you'll click on add. You will have the details you've entered here for your reference, and you will proceed to the third title of the tile, which should be the tax losses transferred to other taxable persons. So whenever you click on this title, you will do the same by adding a new item and completing all the required fields and clicking on add. Once you click on add, you will have the information you've provided for your reference, and you will click on save and go back to the main step. So we will have the tax losses details pre-populated and gray out for your reference. You will proceed to the tax calculation and tax credits section, where it should be auto-calculated based on all the numeric values you've provided, and you will need to answer the questions carefully for the tax credit schedule and proceed to the next step. So whenever you've clicked on the tax credit schedule, you will click on add new item as well, and you will add all the required fields. Next, you will have the page for your review, and you will click on save and go back to the main page. You will have the tax calculation and tax credits auto-calculated for your reference, and you will need to update the estimated or provisional figures included in your corporate tax return in the section below by answering the question with yes or no. And you will scroll down by adding all the additional attachments and updating it by either adding it in PDF or document format. And kindly note, for the first attachment, which is the financial statement as appearing on your screen, it should be signed and stamped before attaching it to enable us to proceed with your corporate tax return. So the ninth step should summarize all the steps you've completed, where you will have the chance for a final review by going through each steps, either by expanding all the steps or collapsing all the steps or going one by one. You will confirm at the end of the page that all the information you've provided is accurate, and you will click on submit. Once you click on submit, your return has been submitted successfully to the FTA, where you will have a reference number that you can follow up with, and you may go back to your profile page and view the status of your application. With this, we've completed the corporate tax return demo, and we will have a quick payment process demo once you completed your return. And we would like to highlight that if you would like to benefit from the initiative where it will waive your registration penalty for the corporate tax return, it doesn't need to complete the payment. You need just to initiate your corporate tax return within 7 months, and you will have the benefit of the initiative. So let's start the payment process. First, you will click on the corporate tax and you will click on My Payments. Once you click on My Payments, you will have the outstanding payments for the corporate tax return. You will select, either you will have the chance to pay all the amount or click on select and pay the partial amount. So let's assume we're paying the partial amount. You will click on select and pay. You will have this page where you can find your return liabilities here based on the period description and the payment due date. You will view the original liability in UAE dirhams and the outstanding liabilities, and you may add the amount you would like to be paid in the box and click on proceed to payment. Once you click on proceed to payment, you will have two payment methods you can pay with, either bank transfer or credit card. You will click on the payment method you would like to proceed with and click on yes by adding your card details. Once you click on yes, you will have the page of the credit card details. You will click on pay and you will have the final page if you would like to download a PDF copy of the acknowledgement screen, or you can go back to the dashboard where you can view the outstanding amount and the amount you've paid and the due date for the same. With this, we've completed the corporate tax filing return and the payment process demos. We will conclude by going through the key takeaways before starting the Q&A session. As you may know, for the registration, you need to ensure that all your that you are registered first for the corporate tax, and you need to update all the required fields, either entity type or any other data. And for the tax period, you need to check and make sure that the tax period, specifically the first tax period appearing in the registration information, is correct. And for the financial statements and accounting methods, it's important to know that taxpayers need to prepare and upload their financial statements along with the corporate tax return. If your revenue of more than 3 million dirhams in the tax period, you will be required to prepare your accounts as per IFRS or IFRS for SMEs. And for qualifying free zone persons and taxpayers with revenue of more than 50 million dirhams in a tax period, you need to get your financial statements audited, where you need to consider if you would like to engage an accountant with an appropriate experience. When do you need to engage an auditor? You need to know that you will need to have the auditor engaged where you should do so before the year end to ensure that the auditor are appropriately involved in the year-end activities, such as including but not limited to stock take and cash count. For the record keeping, you need to make sure that you have all the necessary records and information to support corporate tax return and any application or election you would like to make, where these records must be retained as per the requirements of the corporate tax law. Moving to the small business relief. it's an important section as well, where the questions has been asked, am I eligible to elect to the small business relief? You need to know that taxpayers with revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams should consider if they are eligible for the small business relief election and determine if they wish to claim the relief. Moving to other elections, and if you are eligible for other elections, you need to check whether you are eligible to make other elections as part of your return filing, which includes the elections we've went through in the previous demo. The record gains and losses on a realization basis exclude income from foreign permanent establishment when determining taxable income, applying transactional rules, applying business restructuring relief, applying transfers within qualifying group relief, and be subject to tax at the standard rates instead of the rates applicable to a qualifying free zone person. Moving to the tax residency status, you need to know that and understand if the taxpayers has the tax resident status and consider the impact of any applicable double taxation treaties on their resident status, where this is relevant for completing your corporate tax return. For exemptions, you need to know that certain exempt person will be required to file an application with the FTA within 60 days of the end of their tax period. And when do you need an additional support? Taxpayers need to consider whether they need any additional special support as tax agent or specialist, where this will help in preparing their corporate tax return, requesting clarification, or any other activities. Moving to auditors, audited financial statements are required if you have revenue more than 50 million dirhams in the relevant tax period, and also if you are a qualifying free zone person, where auditor must be a registered auditor. Moving to the related parties and connected person, for this step, the same person can be either a related party and a connected person. So if this is the case, you need to answer the question to both questions whether you had any transactions with related parties or connected persons with yes. However, you will only need to complete the details of the transactions under one of the categories, not under both, where all transactions with related parties and connected persons must be at arm's length. If this is not the case, the taxable person needs to make adjustments in its return to reflect the arm's length amount. For the record keeping, you need to ensure that you have all the necessary records and information to support your corporate tax return, where this records must be retained for a period of 7 years from the end of the tax period. For the income earned outside the UAE, if you are a tax resident of the UAE, you need to include your worldwide income in your return, not only the income from the UAE sources. And finally, the conditions to benefit from the initiative, where we'd like to encourage you to take the benefit from the initiative that was from the Ministry of Finance and the Federal Tax Authority to waive your late registration penalties under the corporate tax law, where it should be applicable to corporate taxpayers and certain exempt persons required to register with the Federal Tax Authority, where you will need to submit the tax return or annual declaration within 7 months from the end of the first tax period, and full compliance with the provisions of the corporate tax law applies. With this, I'll hand over to my colleague Hissa to take us through the Q&A session.
Natural person started a new business through an LLC where he owns 100% of the capital, single owner LLC. Who should register?
Thank you for the question, Hissa. So the answer is the LLC is a taxable person who is a juridical person and have a separate legal personality from its owner. Then it should register for the corporate tax purposes.
Thank you. Can I file one corporate tax return for all companies I own?
Thank you, Hissa, for the question. It's important to know that if the companies meet the requirements to form a tax group and their application to form the tax group is approved, they can file a single corporate tax return covering all members of the tax group. Where companies cannot form a tax group, they will each be required to file a corporate tax return on a standalone basis.
Thank you. Can any company, natural person, elect for the small business relief, or will the Federal Tax Authority inform them whether they are eligible or not?
Yes, elections for small business relief is required to be made in the tax return for the relevant period. No application or intimation is required to or from the FTA as long as the revenue does not exceed 3 million dirhams. In case you elect for the small business relief, you can use the cash basis of accounting and no need to have a financial statement, but you must have a proof of revenue.
Thank you, Roda. Will a free zone entity be required to register and file a corporate tax return?
Yes, all free zone entities will be required to register and file a corporate tax return irrespective of whether they are a qualifying free zone person or not.
What about the time limit to file a tax return?
This is an important question as well for the tax return. And if you would like to receive the tax return guide, kindly add your details in the survey link and complete it successfully to receive the corporate tax guide on the email submitted the survey with. So the answer for the question, what is the time limit to file a tax return? As a natural person, that is a taxable person, they must file their corporate tax return with the FTA no later than 9 months from the end of the relevant tax period, where natural persons should submit a single tax return for all their businesses and business activities subject to corporate tax.
Thank you. The corporate tax return should be submitted by who?
It should be submitted by a taxable person or another person who has the right to do so on behalf of the taxable person, which includes either a tax agent or legal representative or the parent company of the tax group who is required to file the tax return on behalf of all the tax group.
Can I correct my return and how?
This is an important question for correcting your return and to avoid any penalties after the due date of your return. You may have the benefit by completing the initiative where you will have the chance to waive your registration penalty by completing your return. And for the answer of can I correct my return and how? Yes, you can correct it. And if the correction is made before the due date, it should be considered as an amendment. But if it's made after the due date, it must be submitted as a voluntary disclosure through Emiratax.
Thank you, Roda. Do we need a financial statement if elect a small business relief?
The taxpayers who elect the small business relief doesn't need a financial statement but must be able to prove their revenue of the FTA requests. If you didn't elect for the small business relief, a financial statement must be prepared in terms of IFRS or IFRS for SMEs, where all taxable persons with revenue more than 50 million dirhams and qualifying free zone persons, irrespective of their revenue, must have an audited financial statement. And as mentioned, all financial statements must be signed and stamped before attaching it to your return.
Thank you. My company did operate zero revenue. Do I need to file return for corporate tax?
If you have earned if you have not earned, any income in a tax period, you will still need to file your return. But you can elect for the small business relief in this case, and you will have a simplified return. Or if you don't want to elect the small business relief, you will need to complete the normal corporate tax return process. And where amounts are nil, you need to populate nil in the relevant fields.
Do profit and loss and balance sheet statements need to be generated from an accounting software, stamped and signed if the company is a non-qualifying free zone LLC with no revenues but expenses only?
The profit and loss and balance sheet need to be signed and stamped before attaching it to your corporate tax return, where the amount inputs in the tax return must match the amounts as per the financial statement. However, given that the company has no revenue, it may elect in its return for the small business relief, and in which case no tax payable and financial statement need to be attached in the return.
Thank you, Roda. Our sister company has no business and no transactions. Its trade license expired and not renewed, and now we are under process of trade license cancellation. Can I proceed? Can I process the deregistration of the corporate tax now or after the completion of trade license cancellation?
The company needs to apply for deregistration within 3 months from the cessation of the business or business activity, where you need to attach the trade license cancellation to the deregistration application.
Last question. All financial statements need to be signed and stamped if the revenue is over 3 million dirhams. Is it imperative to get it audited by auditors? And if so, is it mandatory for them to be in the register of the auditors in the UAE?
Thank you, Hissa. Only taxable persons, as we've mentioned, with revenue more than 50 million dirhams need audited financial statements. However, if the company is a qualifying free zone person, it also needs a financial statement irrespective of the revenue amount, where the auditor must be a registered auditor.
Thank you, Rola, for your time and for providing clear answers to the questions. And now we are reaching the end of this session. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's workshop. Please visit our official website and follow our social media to stay updated on our events and activities related to corporate tax. Thank you and have a lovely day.